Um, According to some historians, the Ku Klux Klan even attracted a subsequent U.S. President, Harry S. Truman, who, as a candidate for office in Jackson County, Missouri, reportedly saw Klan backing, but asked for his Klan dues back when ordered not to appoint Catholics to government positions. So you see, it's like they use everything, the Klan, the religions, the police, all their institutions. They're all their institutions, you know. So Truman got his fees back because he was a Catholic. And by the way, now everybody's a Catholic in office. That's the new paradigm in the White House. Nancy Pelosi is a Catholic. Biden is a Catholic, and he got a sculpture of the Pope, the so-called Pope, in the Oval Office. Did you even look at that? You know what sculptures he put in there in the Oval Office? So anyway, I mean, a lot of the people claim to be political analysts, and they're not looking at these details. How they are creating, and I think they're coming for Latin America. I think that's what it is. They want to do what Obama did in Africa, recolonized Africa. They want to recolonize the Americas. Latin America. So at the height of its political power, the Ku Klux Klan flexed its muscles when some 40,000 white robed men and women waved American flags and proudly paraded down Pennsylvania Avenue in the nation's capital as onlookers cheered on August 8, 1925, a few months after local KKK vigilantes had terrorized Malcolm's pregnant mother, Louise. So yeah, there was like I say, there was jealous of them because the other ones, they did this horrible lynching. I mean, like in Omaha, Nebraska. It's just like I cannot even read it. I haven't even read it myself. It's just and these are just words. It's true. The mind had a way more imagination than any Hollywood movie. Upon arriving in Omaha, on the heels of the Brown lynching and months after the formation of the Omaha Clavern, Reverend Little landed an industry job and settled in initially with the Smiley's family on the black side of town. Soon after, Louise gave birth to daughter Hilda on October 22nd, 1921. Then son Philbert, 18 months later. Scars of the Omaha incident were still visible downtown, and at barbershops, hairdressers, social clubs, and family gatherings, the Little family heard neighbors talk warily about how the Brown lynching had totally disrupted their lives. As if that were not horror enough, local African Americans now faced the better armed and organized menace of homegrown white racist Klansmen. Straight away, Clavern Number 1 launched separate youth branches for boys and girls and women, and a women of the Klan auxiliary that expanded its Omaha rolls to 1,100. According to the Monitor, in due course, Klan officials will claim a statewide tally of 45,000 members of every age, gender, and social class who regularly mounted street demonstrations, weekend parades, and cross-burning ceremonies in open fields. Yeah, we know that the cross-burning ceremonies came actually from the movie. They already talk about the movie, the Death of a Nation. That should be. It's not too hot. But what I want you to listen right here, this is in-depth detail. We know where Mr. Little was working at now. As if with the autobiography with, I keep forgetting his name. Well, he used to work for the CIA, so I'm not really crazy about him. The writer, I don't know why his name escaped. But, you know, so this is like hearing news from somebody that you love and somebody that you know. So it's like, so now we're finding out more about Mr. Earl Little, which for me, and I mean, he stole the book. He stole the book for me, you know. Early on, local whites branded Reverend Little and his wife as troublemakers, in part because they had established the UNIA chapter, the United Black, I forgot, Association. You know, I was disappointed that keep using the same language from the autobiography, using N-words and all this stuff, you know. I mean, like, I guess I don't know anything about literature. I don't know anything about history for real. So I guess that's just a common procedure. I don't know, to keep using those words. And you know, before I forget, again, you know, about the prior paragraph I just read to you. You know, I had so many people like telling me that I'm racist, that I'm this, that, you know, because, you know, I always say, you know, not all whites, right? Not all whites. There was a time I used to be just on Twitter, just using the hashtag for everything. Not all whites, not all whites. You know, that's what people believe, that not all whites. But over here, I just proved to you. It's just a matter of what's it called, like a little bit of stimulation, and the whites, they show their total lack of color and lack of morals, lack of principles, and their blood thirst. All of them. And that's just the way they are. It is nature, and it's just their nurture. They've been nurtured to do that, and that's just the nature. I guess, I mean, there's been studies too, you know, about what, you know, a melanin deficient, you know, all the effects from being melanin deficient produce, especially internal melanin. Sometimes, you know, like you might see, like, you know, somebody might have a lot of melanin outside but not inside. So that's, you know, that's a whole pyramid. But that's a factor. I mean, we know that's a factor. For them, it's like, it's just a treaty. It's just a treaty. Sign over here, that treaty where, you know, where they get everything you produce practically for free, you know, because that's what they always do with their treaties. We had NAFTA. We had NAFTA in Mexico, and, you know, we used to be one of the healthiest countries in the whole planet. And now we're like number 3, number 4. and cholesterol, hypertension, heart attacks, all of that. Why? Because with NAFTA, they flooded the entire country with junk food. And us, in return, what we send you? We send you vegetables, fresh vegetables, avocados that you love, everything. And, you know, these are very, very horrible treaties. But they have no remorse. They say, oh, it's just, they're very good for business. They're business savvy. Louise and her husband got the boastful missive reprinted in the Unia Journal, the Black World. White supremacy is our slogan, and we are going to rule this country without the aid or consent of the blacks, wrote the Klan leader, as a warning for families such as the Littles. The letter continued, "We are checking up on you, blacks. Omaha comes next." Unia leader Marcus Garvey used the Klan letter along with the 1919 Omaha riot to make his case that America will brutally defend white supremacy at all costs. You see, a visionary. He knew this. He knew this. While you got W.E.B. Du Bois saying, whites are my friends, white loves us, not all whites, not all whites. We have here the most honorable Marcus Garvey, you know, just like, you know, just speaking truth. And see, I'll read it again. Marcus Garvey used the Klan's letter along with the 1919 Omaha riot to make his case that America will brutally defend white supremacy at all cost. And he got a little number, but I don't know where to find the little number at. He got a number 3. I guess it's at the end of the book. I don't know. Sometimes they have it at the bottom of the book. But anyway, I'm not going to distract. This is why it's hard for me to read, because I'm very detail oriented. I'm like, oh, it's a little number here. Number 3. And then I try to... also the movies. I like to see behind the scenes, the Q&A, all that, you know. The Most Honorable Marcus Garvey's international group differed noticeably from its domestic rival, the strictly homegrown National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the NAACP. Both were non-violently opposed to racial oppression, but the NAACP was at the time predominantly white. I didn't know this. You see, Mr. Lester Payne did a lot of research. We're trying to find out. The NAACP was mostly white, then what the hell? Was it like, I guess, you know, I don't know. I guess that's what it was back in the days. You know, they even owned those associations. Where was I? Both were non-violently opposed to racial oppression, but the NAACP was, at the time, predominantly white. It had been founded in 1909 in New York City, with some 60 charter members, only 7 of whom were colored, quote unquote colored. It says it's in quotes. The organization that Malcolm's parents joined was exclusively black, and as community activists, they focused on the domestic group tenets, counseling, self-reliance, independent mindedness, and fierce racial pride, all dangerous pursuits for blacks in the United States. As their family grew, Mr. Earl Little and his wife Louise would insist upon fairness for their children at school, just as they demanded it for themselves in housing and elsewhere. Again and again, they would pay a terrible price for their stands. Even before the Ku Klux Klan's horsemen rode up to their door on the outskirts of Omaha in the spring of 1925, a white delegation had paid Earl's bosses a visit at the meat packing plant where he earned his living. They demanded that the uppity black or the uppity African American be fired or else he was let go. You see, and nowadays we don't even want to risk, oh no, I opened my Facebook account, I don't have a picture, you know, I have a fake name, I have a fake everything, and there's still people, they don't, people they get pissed off because you tag them on Facebook. And why they get so pissed off when they actually never post shit? They're about nothing. People on social media about nothing. How can I follow you? Every time I see, all I see is like, you know, oh, I just took a shit. I'm exaggerating, but, you know, it's just like a waste of time. And that's why they came out with the social media. They thought everybody was going to be like that. You know? Oh, you want to see my new dress? You want to see my new... No, bitch, we don't want to see that. People are dying here. People, we have to, you know, the crackers are putting everything that now, because they know every day hundreds or thousands are waking up and see them with no makeup. See them that they got nothing to do with the ones in the movies. They got nothing to do with the whites in the soap operas, in the television series. They got nothing to do with the whites in the commercials, with the politicians. No. That's, you know, just a front. That's a facade. That's propaganda. That's why they spend trillions of dollars in propaganda, so we can get a benevolent image, a benevolent you know, idea of them. Oh, these are so good, you know. Oh, I used to watch Mr. Rogers, you know, singing about bullshit. And yeah, he's a pedophile. Didn't you see that? All of them they got over there is just, they just made good. That's what they got, makeup budget. They got, you know, budget for, you know, for the lighting, for the writers, for everything. They get that. Because they're fake. Everything is fake. So by the time Malcolm X was born, Reverend Little was supporting his growing family with free will offerings from churches and housing repair jobs he picked up as an independent contractor. That's what Mr. Jason Black always tells you. Learn a trade and master the trade so you will become irreplaceable. If you don't listen to the Black channel every week, I recommend you to go on YouTube and listen to Mr. Jason Black. You put Jason Black, the Black channel. You look him up, and you make sure you activate the little bell so you get the notification when there's a live stream. But he always is on Sundays, and during the week. I mean, might be Wednesday. So you always get the lectures, flawless, amazing lectures. Professor Black Truth, the same. So I mean, it makes so much sense. Instead of sending your children to a university to become indentured servants because they have college tuitions to pay, you can just send them to a good friend for a couple years or 5 years, become an apprentice. Oh, don't you want to learn like whatever? You pay their food, you pay that, I mean, you give them something to the family, so they can keep your child over there. Even if you take him every summer, for 5, 6, 10 summers, he learns something and he'll become irreplaceable. Because people always got stuff to fix. People always have, and we can bring it back. We can bring back the fixing instead of buying a brand new. Can you imagine that? If it's done, you get a contractor and whatever, I mean, I never hired them. I see those in the street. Oh, no job is too small. We go to you and we do whatever, But what if you make a corporation like that they got credentials that we feel comfortable to bring into the house, and we can bring him to do jobs like $200 jobs, because some of us, we don't have the money. We can put up $200. What you can make, like my kitchen floor. I don't have floor in the kitchen. Well, I have floor, you know what I mean. I don't walk on air. But I have no linoleum, so they can put the linoleum. How much is that? $150. Okay, so now my kitchen is fixed. Boom, send somebody else. There's so many ways to make money, but people, oh no, I gotta go to the white school and then fight for the job against 10,000 people for the same job. So now we know where Reverend Little was working at that time, and wow, I can only imagine. At that time he had 3 children already, and no job. He will drive around in the neighborhood where he might see things that needed repair. Wilfred, remember, he's the older one. He would make them an offer. They agreed to it, and he will go ahead and repair whatever it was. Or he would build an outhouse, all kinds of stuff. Yeah, he built his own houses. That's a great idea. You go around there like, oh, you want to your fence? Over here in New York, you can make a lot of old people's fences, all the garage doors, all that. It's falling apart. Wherever you walk around, it's just like they hold them with some rubber band. I seen some garage doors hold together like with a rubber band. I've seen them like that. So just go there and fixing stuff. And then I know a lot of men that love to do that. In Mexico, I know I follow some YouTubers, and that's how they make their money. They go and collect whatever furniture, and they fix it up and they sell it. What was I? Such repair work fell within the skill set of Malcolm's father, who had trained as a carpenter and mason back in Georgia. Yeah, I think yeah, they told us that he had apprenticeships, and that's the best way. And then you have a mentor at the same time, because that man is not only teaching them they're teaching them, a code of life. Already, some 2 generations out of slavery, when statistically they had been 3/5 of a person, blacks conducted an unrequired love affair with the republic that had reluctantly, at best, freedom in 1863. They fought in the United States wars and paid taxes. They rendered cheap labor on railroads and docks, in factories, private kitchens, and cotton fields. Although fulfilling the obligations of citizenship, African Americans were systematically denied the benefits. Yeah, that's what Mr. Jason Black said. To get unemployment in some states, you need lawyers to get unemployment. White supremacy was certified and enforced as national policy by the full force of the Supreme Court, Congress, and the executive branch of the federal government, although in wholly different ways. The courts in 1896, Plessy versus Ferguson, separate but equal ruling, was a sham decision that froze in place an impregnable caste structure under legalized segregation. African Americans were repressed as a permanent underclass and were flagrantly denied equal access to housing, jobs, education, public accommodations, due process. Due process. I thought that's what it meant. Due process in the courts, and despite the passage of the 15th Amendment, the guaranteed right to vote. So you see, I mean, it's not just that we need laws and make laws. They are their laws. At least that's the way they feel. And sure enough, I'm gonna put the heat is coming out. The heat is coming out. So yeah, this way so I don't feel it. It's that you freeze and sometimes you burn in this house. So yeah, the 15th Amendment was like a joke. But guess what? The 13th Amendment is not. If you break the law, you become a slave. I told my friend who just called, I say, why don't you picket the Congress? Why don't you picket the Capitol to remove the 13th Amendment? It's just ridiculous. They say, oh, you're a free man unless you commit a crime, and then you're a slave again. But they say, well, you're not really a slave, because in prison you're making 25 cents an hour. That's right. They're working for corporations for 15 cents an hour. Well, some of them they get 50 cents an hour. And now Trump, the bill that Trump signed say that he was going to raise the wage. That was going to pay the prisoners better. Yeah, probably 5 cents more. African Americans were repressed as permanent underclass. I already read that one, right? Even in the nation's capital, racial segregation was the law of the land, harshly enforced by no less authority than that of the president. In addition to mandating separate and less well-appointed and maintained cafeterias and toilet facilities for African Americans in federal buildings, Woodrow Wilson had allowed the Treasury Department and the Post Office to segregate African Americans civil service employees from whites by makeshift wooden partitions. One colored postal clerk whose duties required regular contact with whites in the office had a cage built around him. According to a letter of complaint to President Woodrow Wilson from noted scholar W.B. Du Bois, when, as previously mentioned, William Monroe Trotter, the editor of the widely read black newspaper, the Boston Guardian, took a delegation of African American leaders to the White House to protest desegregated federal policy. President Wilson rebuffed them sharply. Segregation is not humiliating but a benefit, and ought to be so regarded by you, gentlemen. President Wilson told the delegation from the National Independent Equal Rights League during its November 12, 1914 visit, when Trotter disrupted Wilson's claim that federal employees were racially separated to avoid friction. The president, as widely reported in the New York Times and elsewhere, cited Trotter's tone and dismissed the delegation leader. Your manner offends me, Wilson muted. Despite street rallies defending Trotter, the federal government continued to segregate the races for decades. When in early 1917, the president subsequently petitioned Congress to enter the war in Europe to make the world safe for democracy, African American leaders debated what their stance should be toward an administration that so egregiously denied them equal rights. Should they push for inclusion in American society and join the fight? After having supported Wilson's candidacy in 1912, Du Bois was appalled by the president's eager collaboration with racist Southerner legislators. However, just as abolitionist leader Frederick Douglass had argued for African Americans to fight during the Civil War, Du Bois urged them to join the ranks of Wilson's racially segregated army and drew sharp personal criticism for his support. I mean, listen, I'm a Garveyite I'm a disciple of the most honorable Marcus Garvey in my own ratchet way. I admit it, and so am I of the honorable Malcolm X. And you know, I mean, those are who I become, how I became. You know, I mean, they because they speak to me. They speak to me their teachings. You know, their common sense, because it is common sense. If somebody is making faces at you, they don't want you. You know, I, a healthy self-esteem will be telling us, you know, okay, so guess what? I don't want to uncomfortable you. I don't want to make you uncomfortable. Um, you know, just give me a little bit of financing, from my reparations, my 40 acres and a mule, so I can make my own, you know, everything. You know, we can make our own postal service or whatever, everything, right? But guess what? They're not about that. And let me tell you, I'm gonna open a little bit parenthesis right now. This mess right now in Texas. There's still 3 million people with no electricity, no heat. Because they're using clean energies to terrorize their world countries. Oh, you keep polluting the world. We're gonna have to give you sanctions until you let us, or corporations, rape your country. So, so guess what? We found out, I mean, as Mexicans, that we depended on Texas. We had several states that lost power too, because we was depending from Texas. So immediately our president ordered gas. So he bought the gas like overnight. He overnight. I'm not even sure who he bought it from. I haven't really found out. But immediately President Nicolás Maduro Moros, the constitutional president of Venezuela, and which I'm a big fan of, he said, well, we got all the oil, all the gas that you need, all the gas that Mexico needs. Guess what happened? Immediately the governor of Texas lifted the ban, because he put a ban He put a ban against buying gas or selling gas to Mexico. He lifted up like that. Oh, no, 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 no. We got all the gas that you want. No problem. You see? This is so you gotta be wise. You gotta be strategic what you want, You gotta be very, very, very this is why Dr. Clark say you must have a thinking class. Just problem solving. That's the way it used to be in Africa. While military officers, however, were reluctant to feel armed black GIs against the European soldiers of Germany, Austria, Hungary, and other Central Powers, the Marines strongly opposed accepting African American volunteers, even as volunteers. I mean, this is what it just make me go crazy. It's not the Spics, it's not the Mexicans, it's not like whatever. It's just, I mean, I hate to say it. They don't, it will be anybody but you. Anybody but you. And that's something that I really wish our African American brothers and sisters, they will see that. They will never accept you. They will never leave you alone. It's a fatal attraction. And I think it's in both parts. This fatal attraction is on both parts. It's horrible. It's horrible. I mean, it's like the War of the Roses. I don't know if you got to see that movie with Kathleen Turner. Yeah, I remember Kathleen Turner because she got a voice like mine's. Except hers is considered to be sexy, not mine's. So when in early 1917 the president subsequently petitioned Congress to enter the war in Europe to make the world safe for democracy, African American leaders debated what their stance should be toward an administration that so egregiously denied them equal rights. Should they push for inclusion in American society and join the fight? After having supported Wilson's candidacy in 1912, Dubois was appalled by the president's eager collaboration with racist Southern legislators. However, just as abolitionist leader Frederick Douglass had argued for African Americans to fight during the Civil War, Dubois urged them to join the ranks of Wilson's racially segregated army and drew sharp personal criticism for his support. I know, I read the whole chapter, the whole paragraph, I know. White military officers, however, were reluctant to field armed black GI against the European soldiers of Germany, Austria-Hungary, and other Central Powers. The Marines strongly opposed accepting African American volunteers, and those the Navy accepted were restricted to non-combatant menial posts as steward or mess hall workers. Still, some 2.3 million African Americans registered for the draft. 2.3. Woo! With 370,000 inducted into the military, and despite heavy resistance from white soldiers and fellow soldiers, African Americans performed acts of yeah, that's what I was thinking of, baffling. It was baffling. Battlefield valor that went lengthily unnoticed, as usual. African Americans, no, I'm sorry. Not until 73 years later, when a government review disclosed strong racial bias in the Army, would America award a Medal of Honor to a black combatant from World War I in 1991. That's not even worth mentioning. Come on, one. Come on. White House ceremony, President George H.W. Bush presented the honor to the sister of Corporal Freddie Stowers, who had been recommended for it shortly after he died from wounds suffered from suffered when he led an assault on 45 German, fortified, I'm sorry, fortified, not 45, German trenches. This language is so difficult, I swear. Why was he, an African American who was considered not to be a human being, nothing, I mean, like three-fifths or whatever, four-fifths of a human being and whatnot. Why is he leading attacks? We all know why. Carne de cañón. That's what we say in Latin America. I don't know how to translate that. In a post-war editorial, The Crisis, in The Crisis, Du Bois, again, like Frederick Douglass, urged African Americans to close ranks for full citizenship and to marshal every ounce of our brain and brawn to fight a sterner, longer, more unbendedly battle against the forces of hell in our own land. Later, in 1919, Du Bois more specifically wrote, For 3 centuries we have suffered and cowered. No race ever gave passive submission to evil longer. More piteous trial. Today we raise the terrible weapon of self-defense. When the murderer comes, he shall not longer strike us in the back. When the armed lynchers gather, we too must gather armed. When the mob moves, we propose to meet it with bricks and clubs and guns. Despite the odds, Du Bois urged African Americans to make their armed stand in the land where their forebears labored and died as slaves. And here we go. Now they're talking about the most honorable Marcus Garvey. The foreign-born Marcus Garvey was convinced otherwise counsel not black fight but black flight, at least psychologically. Yeah, of course, you don't fight when you're not ready. You have to retreat, train, get all your shit together, and then you fight. And in some cases, physically. From the presence and influence of the white man, he considered irredeemable racist. That's my man. I don't waste my time, thinking this new batch of crackers is going to be a little bit better than the other batch of crackers. No. I never seen a rat giving birth to cute little bunnies. Never. Where was it again? Unredeemable racists. That's what they are. Unredeemable. Irredeemable. It's spelled irredeemable. Irredeemable with 2 E's. Racist. Too numerous and far too well armed. In this conflict of perspectives, Garvey would capture the loyalty of both Malcolm's Caribbean-born mother, and his rebellious father from Georgia, Mr. Earl Little, a restless man of prodigious energy with a whispered reputation as a ladies' man. That's what they hate the most. Visited the homes of curious African Americans to ply his admixture of Christian gospel and secular Garveyism. Of course, you gotta like, it's like a crack addict. You're not gonna be like, okay, we're going cold turkey here. We're going cold turkey. Of course, they flee. Where was I? Okay, but Garvey's group did not call for mass repatriation. Oh, yeah. Africa was the homeland, sure enough, but Mr. Marcus Garvey's group did not call for mass repatriation in the near term. And unless the specific question was raised, the third grade educated Reverend Little did not discuss global Pan-African repatriation at all. I mean, it's like, come on, do you need to even say that? I mean, like, in first grade, are they going to talk about algebra and all that stuff? Okay, so I guess he felt he needed I mean, I don't know. Combating white dominance in the United States during the first quarter of the 20th century broke down roughly along these two distinct tactical lines pushed by the NAACP and UNIA, and is spearheaded nationally by W.B. Du Bois on one side and Marcus Garvey on the other. Ironically, each man had been influenced early on by Booker T. Washington, the famed educator who started Tuskegee Institute in Alabama and who published his influential autobiography Up from Slavery in 1901, which I started reading, and I don't know where the book is. Yeah, I think it's in my bedroom. However, the I never seen this word, internecine battle between the two camps and their strong-minded leaders will rage for years, even as African Americans continue their central struggle for equality. Yeah, I mean, those who don't know history are bound to repeat it. Du Bois had posed the global parameters of the racial conflict, though not the solution, in his 1903 book The Soul of Black Folk. The problem of the 20th century is the problem of the color line, the relation of the darker to the lighter races of men in Asia and Africa, in America and the islands of the sea. Garvey agreeing that European colonialism was the dominant world force of the turn of the century, advocated that indigenous peoples in Africa, India, and the rest of Asia should rise up and reclaim their occupied homelands from the illicit white settlers and lead them Europe, which the United States and the Indies apparently to be shared with indigenous people in the American landmass. The British colonization of Jamaica had been a key trigger for Marcus Garvey's program when, at the age of 27, he founded the UNIA and expanded it as a bulk work against, white rule and racism in the West Indies, Africa, Europe, and elsewhere. Following his relocation to America in 1916, the skilled, self-assured promoter, a printer by trade, launched his organization in Harlem, the newly acclaimed capital of the African American. Almost 50 years after the Civil War, offering his Up Your Mighty Race called the Colored Citizens, which seem more practical than the NAACP program. The Jamaican leader began barnstorming key cities and the cities of the north, and also ventured as far south as Atlanta. The great West Indian African American leader, as Garvey was built on promotional posters, directed his message of inspiration to the 12 million of our people in this country. And during World War I, he found surprisingly receptive audience among the thousands of Southern African Americans streaming north in search of industrial jobs at the start of the Great Migration, which would continue into the 1970s and total some 6 million persons. Accordingly, Garvey skillfully went after the non-readily African American masses in America, black masses in America, with pomp, glitz, and ceremony. He staged colorful street parades, complete with marching bands, Black Cross nurses in white dresses, and men of erect bearing decked out in military uniforms with medals, lavaliers, and swords. The lead touring car of his extravaganza showcased the honorable president, as Garvey was referred to, drawn up in naval dress uniform with gold buttons, sash, silver sabre, and plumed capped, befitting a crowned emperor. This pomp and circumstance was intended to improve black self-respect. We must canonize our own saints, create our own martyrs, and elevate to position of fame and honor black men and women who have made their distinct contributions to our racial history, Garvey insisted. During the post-war years, the UNIA met in its Liberty Hall site in Harlem with an initial membership mainly of West Indians who constituted roughly a quarter of the non-white population in Upper Manhattan. In due course, Garvey also would attract homegrown blacks streaming out of the South to work in the war industries of the North and the Midwest. The group's first New York City convention in 1920 packed Madison Square Garden with some 25,000 blacks from throughout the hemisphere. That's where you see that picture. You see that? I think it's right here. That picture. That it was like, oh gosh, I have to cover this. You see, that is the picture. They took a picture while he was about to lead that meeting. I didn't know. I seen always that picture. I seen always that picture, but I never seen. So, you know, whites always love to pit people together. They even tried in Mexico to pit together Zapata against Villa. It's something. It's their favorite weapon because it never get old. Divide and conquer. Okay, so boasting of boosting 4 million members by 1923. 4 million. Can you imagine? The UNIA ultimately listed some 700 branches in 38 states. Insiders put the U.S. number at 20,000 to 30,000 dues paying members. Sorry, with thousands more. I'm getting a hiccup. Where was that? Okay. With thousands more. Where was thousands more? It said it was 30,000 due paying members with thousands more curiosity seekers, supporters, and hangers-on. Garvey would turn out to be one of the most charismatic evangelists of the 1920s. I would say the century. The federal government zeroed in on him as an exceptionally fine orator, creating much excitement among African Americans throughout his stemship proposition, and saw in his appeal seditious potential. That's bullshit. Instead of saying like, oh, so we don't have to worry about them no more because they're gonna get their own, right? That's how you know they are. What he called them? Irredeemable racist, unredeemable racist, or whatever it's called. The Black Star Stemship line was a major fundraising campaign Garvey had launched to establish a shipping operation between the United States and Africa. In a 1919 memo, the young J. Edgar Hoover, they call him Hoover because he was like a Hoover. Vacuum. No, it was like a vacuum. Like a Hoover vacuum. Head of the Special Intelligence Divisions in the Bureau of Investigations, the predecessor of the FBI, specializing in deporting undesirable aliens, took note of Marcus Garvey as a prominent agitator among African Americans. Unfortunately, Hoover wrote Special Agent Ridley on October 11, Garvey has not yet violated any federal law whereby he could be proceeded against on grounds of being an undesirable alien. With an eye toward building federal deportation case, however, Hoover noted that there might be some proceeding against him for fraud with his Black Star Line propaganda. Subsequently, in a pattern of domestic spying that would expand ominously through the years and would yearly echo 40 years later in its surveillance of Malcolm X, the Bureau hired 4 blacks to work in the case and had one of them infiltrate the United African Organization Improvement Association. That's what it is. And spy on Garvey's every move in Harlem. Detailed memos were filled on all meetings, official contacts, and the group's financial records. Unaware of the government surveillance, Garvey stridently promoted Africa as the proud homeland of all blacks, and unlike Du Bois and the NWACP, he countered claims of white supremacy by proclaiming that, if anything, the African American was superior. This clarion message had no visible means of enforcement, but it was anathema nonetheless to the white population of early 20th century Omaha and the Midwest that baby Malcolm's parents encountered. Nationally, the NWACP and its leaders, along with other racially mixed civil rights groups, as well as mainstream black churches, would differ from the UNIA over how exactly the combat the formidable superstructure of racism that had characterized the United States since the very founding as a slave-holding republic. Through a thundering against the Western views of the colonized dark continent as a basket case, the first Jamaican leader urged African Americans foremost, or urged blacks, I guess, because he had international following, foremost to work for the total redemption of Africa, and to join him in correcting this distorted image of the continent. I want Mr. Dubois to know that all American or African Americans are not ashamed of Africa. Garvey told a Liberty Hall audience decades before an elderly Dubois would move to Ghana. Why would we allow the Dutch, the Boers, and others to go down into Kimberley and possess the diamond fields? Why should we allow the Belgians to go down into the Congo and reap the benefits of rubber? We should stand by the slogan, African for the Africans. The global philosophy of the UNIA was summarized in Garvey's Declaration of Rights of the Black Peoples of the World, which he placed alongside the Bible as a guide for those who, with confidence in ourselves, would carve our way to liberty. If Africans scattered throughout the diaspora were to progress as people anywhere in the world, Garvey declared that they must first reclaim the birthplace of humankind as their noble motherland. Broadly, he asks, where is the black man's government? Where is the king and kingdom? Where is his president? Where is his president, his country, and his ambassador, his army, his navy, his men of big affairs? As parts of symbolic response to these questions, Garvey designated a black, red, and green flag for his new republic and declared himself provisional president. The tricolors would subsequently be adopted by a few African countries upon their liberation. As a practical matter, however, the UNIA short term was never the single-minded black back to Africa movement that outside critics claimed. During these post-World War I years, Reverend Earl Little embraced Garvey while in Omaha, but chiefly urged African Americans to organize and improve their lot here in the white man's country. In this, Earl followed the lead in his other key of his other key heroes, fellow Southerners, Booker T. Washington, whose up from slavery had inspired the teenage Garvey himself in his celebrated 1895 speech, dubbed the Atlanta Compromise. Washington, born into slavery in 1856 in Virginia, had urged African Americans to acquaintance, I don't know, to the status quo and to advance in America by lowering their more lofty expectations. This plea for an apparent accommodation with segregation, including famously advising his followers to cast down your buckets where you are, earned him the embrace of white Southerners and rendered Washington the most influential African American. While praising Washington, the great sage of Tuskegee, as a mentor and even as the inspiration for the formation of the UNIA, Garvey gathered his international group to move well beyond Washington's domestic plan of industrial serfdom and industrial peonage. Garvey's group would demand a place in the political sun for the 400 million African Americans throughout the world. Africans throughout the world, I'm sorry. The UNIA leader blamed even Frederick Douglass, who had died in 1895, as well as Washington and contemporary black leaders like W.B. Du Bois, for not preparing the minds of those for the approaching age. No, we won't make that mistake. As Garveyites, the parents of young Malcolm followed UNIA policy of referring to Africa as the homeland. Most African Americans, however, under the sway of Hollywood and prevailing public opinion, rejected the Dark Continent as a nation of savages and unspeakable embarrassment. Yeah, that's what it is. And our African American brothers and sisters, they get surprised when they get disrespect. I don't understand. You know, I kind of do understand, because we have the Chicanos over here too. You know, that identity they're coming up with. You know, what they've been coming up with. I'm not gonna say it's a new one. During Americans' long and genocidal history of slavery and suppression, African Americans have been conditioned by state terror and brutal campaigns against aggressive leaders such as Nat Turner into an apparent state of acceptance as a matter of survival. And under Booker T. Washington's counseling of group acquaintance, they felt not only inextricably bound to America, but also strangely hopeful about their prospects. Yeah, I told you, this is spend trillions of dollars a year in propaganda to make it, oh, this is, this is the shit, you know, you're banking with the best. Thus, Marcus Garvey's UNIA was increasingly challenged by homegrown interest groups, most especially the white-led NWACP and Du Bois, the erudite Harvard scholar, as a leading intellectual of the day, the Massachusetts-born son of half Haitian father, took great expectation to the popularity of Marcus Garvey, the lightly educated autodidact from Jamaica. In addition to their differences over fight or flee tactics, Du Bois and Garvey were separated by a more primal divide that could not be reconciled and that was keenly reflected among their fellow followers. This shadowy ghost had plagued African Americans down through the generations as the group's nasty little secret: skin color. Yeah, Dr. Umar been saying that for years. Among individuals and families of Malcolm's childhood, for instance, many light-skinned African Americans judged the social fitness, intelligence, and status and potential capabilities of others within the race by their admixture of white bloodlines. And I've been saying that too. Now that I'm reading, every day I read African Twitter, continental Africa. And, I tell them, colorism in America is alive and well, especially in the African American community. They like they think we are all blind, that we don't see who you favor. You favor these people who nobody even know they're black. A lot. I mean, even Kaepernick. I mean, if he was, to have a haircut, nobody would know he's African American. It's a lot of just look around. It's like most of it is like the mulatto, the so-called mulatto class is king. Those with lighter shades, along with softer hair texture and rainbow eye colors, were dubbed high yellows, red bones, or simply mixed race, and as such, they generally assigned themselves a superior status within the African American community. As your skin get lighter, your features get brighter. Wow, I never heard that atrocity. Your future. I thought you said your feature. I'm sorry, my reading is obviously duh. I should have warned you, right? Wow, as your skin get lighter, your future get brighter. Yeah, that's a protection for the complexion. Became a guideline of this prejudice. Can you believe that as a child? Like,
Malcolm X used to say, only an idiot would allow the enemy to raise their children, you know? Oh my god. Where am I? Become became a guideline of this prejudice, which despite periodic ebbs would survive into the 21st century in most such instances historically, both in the United States and the West Indies. The white parent of or grandparent was paternal and almost universally was absent after the birth of the child. Yeah, just like in my neighborhood. I live in a Dominican neighborhood. You always see these women with the white childrens. Never see them with the father. As was Louis' father back in Grenada, having washed their hands of the matter. These fathers generally lived on in a respectable denial with their white families across town. Still, despite laboring under the white black oppression of slavery, Jim Crow, and persistent racism, some African Americans steadfastly embraced this intra group color distinction as they grasp for a semblance of power. And we saw that the pictures of Kamala Harris from college, from her sorority. She was the light skin, and she was all surrounded by beautiful, African women, the African, phenotype. And they still allow them to be like that. And sometimes you see the pictures, and the light skinned bitch is sitting down and everybody's standing up. Unbelievable. Oh, but you ask them about Mexicans, they'll tell you all the problems of African Americans is because of Mexicans. Does a subcaste system among African Americans attended by a discriminatory pattern of behavior sprang up along skin tone lines and has lingered over the generations as dirty linen in plain view. African American leaders have generally not abstained or been spared. Early on, it was noted that Marcus Garvey's contempt for lighter skinned competitors was based on his experience with mixed race Jamaicans back home, and in part on what he perceived as skin tone chauvinism among American born blacks, rivals in the NAACP. The National Urban League high-toned churches and other civic groups like Earl and Louise Little, their light-skinned son Malcolm had to contend with races of this intragroup skin tone bias in dealing with key individuals and organizations throughout his life. Scholars have traced this behavioral pattern back to the period when mixed race slaves working within the plantation house would lord it over their brethren 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 sweating in the fields. Their breath, I guess their breath, that's what I mean. Whites generally looked on with a stone-harder indifference, if not denial, except when money was involved. Thus, all children of slave mothers were deemed by law to be chattel, no matter the race or circumstance of the father. President Thomas Jefferson, who held captive 600 slaves, for example, reportedly fathered 6 children with slave mistress, Sally Hemings. Those who lived past infancy were listed as the household leaders in the household ledgers as black chattel. The more hands from the kitchen, the more hands for the kitchen, the better. Nonetheless, a class distinction sprang up among chattel slaves, and encouraged perhaps by some white holders as method of appeasing bonded mulattoes angling for advantages, no matter how light. And I recommend you right now a book that I have not finished, The Black Jacobins, which is the history of Haiti, when the Europeans first arrived. And he talked about all these, nonsense of people fighting and no, I'm lighter than you. I'm 1 shade or 2 shades lighter than you, and nobody can see it. It's just, I mean, I laugh because, and you wish you can go back in time and slap them all what the hell are you doing? Why are you allowing it just on skin color? Not all fair-skinned African Americans play along. The great abolitionist Frederick Douglass, a notable mixed-race offspring, for example, retracted to his circumstance by rebelling against white men in denial, who condemned their very own children to an inferior state of captive existence. In his narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass, the ex-slave, what a title! The ex-slave Douglass wrote, "The whisper that my master was my father may or may not be true, and true or false, it is of but little consequence to my purpose, whilst the fact remains in all its glaring odiousness
that slaveholders have ordained and by law established that the children of slave women shall in all cases follow the condition of their mothers. After the Reconstruction period, the United States Census designated all ex-slaves simply as blacks and mistreated them as such. One drop of black blood made the case, as had been the custom for centuries. Mulattoes or mixed race types, save those secretly passing as Caucasians, were accorded the full range of racial suppression reserved for the blackened masses. I don't know. They were banned from jobs reserved for whites, segregated under federal, state, and local Jim Crow practices, restricted to inferior education, housing, and possibly and where do you go? No, and public accommodations. No, I don't know. Barred from major league sports, assigned to all black military units, and more than a few were lynched without regard to their mixed blood ancestry, straight hair, light toned skin, or gray-green eyes. I doubt it. I doubt it that statistically speaking, the percentages, come on. But anyway, that is something that I have conversations and stuff, just I own this apartment. I bought it in 1994. So as I only had here in the United States, I was only here in the United States already for 5 years. And you get to buy property. Okay. Does denied white privilege and reject does deny white privilege and reject it even by their paternal blood relatives, a determined segment of the mulatto subcaste resorted to mimicking the petite aspects of American racism toward dark-skinned African Americans. Over the years, with some exceptions, this rising so-called black bourgeoisie, including some civil rights organizers, maintain a petite caste system exercising economic, social, and psychological advantage over their darker black neighbors, and sometimes blood relatives, siblings even. The practice was most common among blacks along the Tidewater Basin of the Virginias in the District of Columbia. In Virginia is District of Columbia? I don't know. I thought it was separate. I don't know geography, I'm sorry. In large swaths of the Carolinas and in niches of the Deep South, such as Atlanta, and most especially in New Orleans and patches of Louisiana, but it was not unknown in urban areas such as Chicago, Philadelphia, Baltimore, and New York City. Yeah, right. No, I think it was just different. Well, I lost what I wanted to say. And functionally, the bright-skinned black class
screened out darker members of the race from prime enrollment at historically black colleges and universities, banning them altogether from certain Greek fraternities and sororities. Yeah, I remember what I was going to say. I was going to say, a classic example is Haiti. The whole island of Haiti, which, they call half of it, they call it Dominican Republic. So the Dominican Republic made it a point to be at least one shade lighter than their Haitian brothers and sisters. So ever since then, they've been selling out, they've been spying on Haiti, they've been launching campaigns of defamation, and just like the African continent, and just despicable people. The once you put lighter skin in a community of dark skin, they cannot help themselves. I noticed to go above and beyond. It's like, I mean, now there's no much leverage now, but I can only imagine, especially after reading. Well, I read half of the book already. The Black Jacobins. I want you to read that book. Rejected by their white paternal relatives. Still over the generations, heroic and oftentimes complicated struggles against Jim Crow racism were often conducted by such mixed race men and women. So I'm not lying to you. Did I read right? Still over the generations, heroic and oftentimes complicated struggles against Jim Crow racism were often conducted by such mixed race men and women. Rejected by their white paternal relatives, those activists counter-rejected those bloodlines on principle, drew in aggressively with their darker brethren. I don't know what that means. This is BRETHREN. These staunch race men included blacks such as Booker T. Washington, the journalists Samuel Cornish and William Monroe Trotter, the writer James Weldon Johnson, the poet Jean Toomer, and the physician Charles Drew, as well as mixed race archivers such as the NAACP leader Walter White and the Reverends Adam Clayton Powell, father and son, throughout Thurgood Marshall, Rosa Parks, and indeed W.B. Du Bois himself. I was wondering if they were keeping score, and obviously they're keeping score. Who was this holier than thou light skins who sacrificed their white privilege for you. I mean, I guess you're now supposed to erect a monument to the light skins. I mean, it feels just really weird just reading this, as if they actually needed any more. I mean, the only reason that we know their names is because it was light skins. Even while battling the imposition of the inferior status by white Americans, many of these mixed race types held out for their subcaste advantages over their darker brethren. I guess it's brothers, brothers, but the word came out again. And thus, just as black leaders of Malcolm X's childhood differed over how to combat exterior white racism, they also squared off um, among themselves over the interior matter of skin tone chauvinism. Unlike Du Bois, who considered himself a mulatto, Marcus Garvey was dark as Senegalese and proud of it. At the time of his birth, the British Commonwealth Census recorded Jamaica's population as 2% Anglo-Saxon, 18% mixed race Euro-Jamaicans, and 78% Afro-Jamaicans. This multi-tiered register of the white minority British settler colony foreshadowed the codifying of racial apartheid by the minority Boer government of South Africa, as in South Africa the ebony majority in Jamaica was threatened as a permanent underclass, was treated as a permanent underclass. They were looked down upon, if not despised, not only by the white settler colonialist on the island, but also by mixed race Euro Jamaicans. Unlike these countries, the United States, with a safe white majority projected into the mind until the mid first century, was only recently seen demographers toying with population control device that would fragment minority groups, in quotations, minority groups, grounded by African Americans into such divisive categories as mixed race, non-white Hispanics, browns, people of color, etc. As an unmixed Afro Jamaican, Garvey abandoned all hope that whites and the mulatto class on the island, backed by the British Empire, will voluntarily relinquish their privileged status. So the fiery UNIA leader set out to force his double-barrel issue of race and subcaste inequality at home as well as in the United States, casting aside subtly as it all matters of policy. Garvey drafted UNIA doctrine calling for pure black race, just as all self-respecting whites believed in pure white race. According to the philosophy and opinions of Marcus Garvey, compiled by his second wife, Miss Amy Jacques Garvey, I am conscious of the fact that slavery brought upon us the curse of many colors within the black race, Mr. Garvey stated. But that is no reason that we ourselves should perpetuate the evil hands instead of encouraging of those bastardly in the race. We feel that we should not set out to create a race type and a standard of our own which would not in the future be stigmatized by bastardy, I'm sorry, but could be recognized and respected as a true race type, anteceding even our own time. According to Mr. Garvey, notably this 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 disparaged, I'm sorry, even his black heroes such as Booker T. Washington burned to an enslaved cook and an unknown white man, and the great Frederick Douglass citing their unfortunate circumstances of being brought into the world through bastardy, the rape of one race upon the other, the abuse of the mothers, and the race by the men of the other. It did not escape notice that leaders of the UNIA were darker hued than leaders of other black movements of the day. The NWACP, for example, fielded mainly light-skinned blacks officially. There was not even fronting. Wow, I did not know this. I wonder what the bylaws are for right here, the NAN, National Action Network. The NWACP, for example, fielded mainly light-skinned blacks officials. No, it's officials, not officially. Officials. I'm sorry, my reading is not very good. Its famed Walter White was indistinguishable from a Caucasian to the most discerning eye. That's the one. That's how they like him, if they like him. Well, they like him because they can use him. You know, they know the secrets of that culture. Does the bold African pellet of the UNIA leaders shame some black groups that, taking their cue from the integrated NWACP, branded themselves as colored? You see? And you know what I'm coming to mind right now? This transgender bullshit that they just made up overnight. This transgender shit. And they just said, guess what? Gender is a spectrum, not a dichotomy. And you say, okay, can you show me the evidence? You know, how you came about this conclusion? They don't have nothing. They don't have nothing. They just, I'm white and I say so. So you see how they was going the same direction to create this subcaste, whatever, you know, and you know, because that's more money for them, you know, the non-profit industrial complex. Everybody get their own organizations. Everybody's always milking, you know, the cow, the cash cow. The W.B. Du Bois likely adopted the high yellow preference while an undergraduate at segregated Fisk College, where such prejudice were common. Already a national leader, he took Garvey's counter-move against caste privilege as a personal affront. Within the pages of the Crisis, the NWACP journal that he had created a year after the group's founding, Du Bois campaigned against Booker T. Washington's call for black intellectual acquaintance, and he wanted no part of Garvey's Back to Africa movement. So the most dangerous African American man was him, not the most honorable Marcus Garvey.
That's how he destroyed the Garvey movement by by publicly naming him, and that's something that Dr. King did too against the Honorable Malcolm X. You know, and they don't realize perhaps the power they got with their voice. You know, once you say that, it's just like you gotta be very careful who you endorse and who you cast out. So Du Bois campaigned against Booker T. Washington's call for black intellectual acquaintance, and he wanted no part of Garvey's Back to Africa movement, along with slamming UNIA policies. The Harvard scholar also attacked the West Indian caste, education, and physical appearance. He was a racist. A little fat black man is how Du Bois described Marcus Garvey. Unbelievable. He's a reckless individual. Wow. No wonder the crackers love him so much. A little fat black man is how Du Bois described Garvey in the Century magazine in February 1923. Ugly, but with intelligent eyes and big head. Sound like Biggie, black and ugly as ever. He's still the man with the je ne sais quoi. It wasn't ugly, you know, at all, but you know, he used that perception because of his rich color, and he used that, you know. The Century magazine in February 1923. Ugly, but with intelligent eyes and a big head. He followed up with this cast put down by drafting a bill of particulars against the fiery Jamaican for black readers. Garvey countered that Du Bois was pure and simply a white man's black. Who was a little Dutch, a little French, a little black. A monstrosity. Well, he only spoke the facts. He did not offend it. The rabid mulatto, he said, deserves a horse whipping. I mean, I'm laughing, but this is not a laughing matter. I'm talking about the biggest leaders of the time. Wow. In less personal tones, however, some disciplinary followers of those two pillars of black liberation would submerge the skin tone issue to a point of being a non-issue. Relatives of young Malcolm's father in Georgia, for example, were surprised to learn early on that Louise was just as devoted to Garveyism as her dark-skinned husband, while quite proud of her light skin as well as of Malcolm's. Louise did not consider Garvey's color fixation a matter of personal consequence, choosing instead to work for the larger cause of black unity. Yeah, of course they didn't have the DNA, they didn't have the analysis of melanin, you know, and you know, carbon, and how it's a crucial part of humanity,
it's a vital, um, element. That's why the like Dr. Laila Africa used to say they have a melanin convention, but no blacks are allowed. Invited, not even invited. They know what they was doing. Um, she told us the reason I married your father was because he was dark. See, you see, I wanted my children to have some color. She always made us feel proud of our black father. She would never let you say anything derogatory about somebody because they were black. In those days, there were many people who who did make something out of color. The community will try to establish this caste system. There were the blacks, there were the browns, there were the yellows, and down the line, and on down the line, they would make much out of that. We never got caught up in that sort of thing. As far as we were concerned, blacker was the best. As in other matters of social grounding, young Malcolm's family stood out among blacks as something of an exception. So I'm on page 45. I just started page 45. I'm gonna leave it like this. Um, you know, I just wanted to read anyway. I'm so glad that you read with me. Of course, I'll read a little faster when I'm not talking, but I don't know how many pages there was, from 28 to 40 to 44. You do the math. And, if you find this video and you watch it, I mean, definitely you should buy the book. And you should buy it from Ethnic Books. He's usually on 149th Street, just like between the Citibank and what is that 3rd Avenue. You can see him right there. He always have a van. Sometimes it's on 125th Street, or you can just text him. You can send him a text at 571 366 0299. I guess I should have said that before, right? 571 366 0299. It's so interesting. He got 2 6s and 2 nines. The 9s got, and the 6 got. So he got some interesting mathematics. I don't know what it means. 571 366 0299. And send him a text and tell him that Brooke say hi. I don't get no commission or nothing. I just like, if you feel better, like as to say, oh, I got your number, I already made a video, but I'm going to make another one for Instagram. I want to make one for Instagram about the recent books that I bought, which I haven't really opened some of them. I haven't even got time to open. And now that I went and back and got me this one, this one is the newest one, but it's the one I have read the most, I think. So I'm really happy to learn more, and I learned more about the history of this land. Why things are the way they are in this land. So it definitely help you, if anything, to understand, how things work in this country. So yeah, I'm liking it a lot. I mean, I wish it was more like smooth, just talking about, like in this case, about the littles, talking about the whole thing. In if they had asked me, I would have say, yeah, come on, go 10 pages, go 10 pages just talking about Malcolm's family at the beginning, and then you can do the history class. But it's all right. I mean, we need the history class. I'm telling you, I'm learning a lot of stuff about the history, the contextualization. Is extremely well contextualized, this book. I so far highly recommend it. You know, from a Pulitzer writer, Mr. Lester Payne. And actually, he died before he finished. So his daughter Tamara was the one who published it. I mean, I'm sure it was practically almost finished. But as it said at the beginning, he spent hours talking to his family. Hours. So maybe one day those files might be open to the public, so we can see his writings, and we can hear his recordings with Malcolm's family, with Miss Ella Collins. Anyway, it wasn't too bad. I mean, the only bad thing about it, I guess, was my reading, right? Sorry. Thank you for being such a good sport. Let me take this one first and turn it off. This is how I had it in this thing. Yeah, I'm waving at people, so they don't say that I don't wave back. I was just reading. So thank you for watching, everybody. And I guess you hit the X, right? And that's how it turned off. And video. I guess share on which one? I guess, yeah, download it. Share to IG. Share to the OG. And that's alright. I guess I'm supposed to find a good picture of me. Whatever. Oh, you want me to put the title again? I'm glad that I did a copy and paste. Alright, post a preview, I guess. I don't know. Should I hear advanced settings? No, that's not for me. Post. So Instagram, it was posted. Hopefully it will inspire people to... Oh, here is Miss Ilyasa Shabazz said, my father in Cairo just months before he will be assassinated at the age of 39. Despite following his every move, the FBI informant called him a man of high moral character who neither smokes nor drinks. He spoke truth to power, and we know the truth is timeless. Rest in everlasting peace, Dad. Malcolm X. May 19, 1925 to February 21st, 1965. So depressing. I will say, rise in power, King. He will come back. We have to make a world worthy of Malcolm X. We gotta make a worthy of the most honorable Marcus Garvey. That's what we gotta work on. You know, some spiritual people, they believe they don't want to come back because what's the point? They get killed right away. We gotta do way better. We definitely do.